HJR4 by Meyer, proposing a constitutional amendment prohibiting the enactment of a law imposing an occupation tax on certain entities that enter into transaction conveying securities or imposing a tax on certain security transactions.
The chair recognizes Mr. Meyer to explain the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House Joint Resolution 4 proposes a constitutional amendment to the Texas Constitution to prohibit the legislature from enacting a law that imposes a tax on securities transactions or an occupation tax on a registered securities market operator. These are generally referred to as financial transaction taxes. HJR4 was voted unanimously out of the Ways and Means Committee, 12-0. I want to thank my joint authors for their hard work on this bill, Chair Button, Chair Vasut, Speaker Moody, and Chair Anchia. This HJR would be placed on the November 4th, 2025 ballot to allow for voters to decide for themselves whether to enact this change. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I move passage.
The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Rodriguez-Ramos.
The chair recognizes Ms. Rodriguez-Ramos to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise to offer a simple, targeted amendment to House Joint Resolution 4. This amendment ensures we are not using the state constitution to protect unlimited wealth accumulation while working Texans struggle to get by in a system that has set them up for failure. This amendment ensures we are not using this resolution to create a permanent constitutional loophole for Wall Street or the Texas Stock Exchange our governor keeps talking about. As it stands, HJR4 would ban the legislature from ever taxing securities transactions or market operators, ever. No matter how massive the transaction, no matter how wealthy the institution, no matter how much an ultra-wealthy billionaire uses our public infrastructure to accumulate unimaginable wealth, we're tying our hands forever. This amendment is simple. It says if you're making a transaction of over $10 million in assets, we're going to exempt that from this blanket ban. Why? Because actual working Texans aren't making $10 million transactions. These aren't family investments or retirement accounts. We should protect those. But if we don't exempt at least multi-million-dollar transactions from these wealthy tax breaks, we're giving a free pass to hedge funds and ultra-wealthy stock traders. My amendment doesn't create any new taxes. It simply preserves the option for future lawmakers for when our state might need it the most. Right now, over half of our state revenue comes from sales taxes, making our tax code one of the most regressive in the nation. That means everyday Texans are paying more, while the ultra-wealthy, those with so much money that they make money off of their money, are asked to pay nothing. Everyday Texans pay more in sales taxes, property taxes, and hidden costs, from tolls to medical debt. While we stand here on the first bill of our legislative session, our #1 priority, enshrining tax protections for the wealthiest actors in our economy right into our damn Constitution. Is this really who we're fighting for? I urge you to support this amendment to make sure HJR4 doesn't become a constitutional shield for wealth at the expense of the people we serve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Wu, for what purpose?
Would the lady yield for questions?
Generally, I yield.
Yes, I yield.
Thank you. Rep. Rodriguez-Ramos, you've been on this floor for quite a while, correct?
Correct.
And every single session, members complain loudly about property taxes, correct?
Correct.
And one of the reasons that people complain about property taxes is that so much of local revenue is forced to come through property taxes.
Correct.
Right? And yet we keep banning all sorts of other possible revenue streams even before they exist, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so what we're doing, in fact, is closing more doors so more stuff has to go through property taxes.
Yes, closing the doors for the wealthy to pay future taxes, but
Yeah.
not for working class folk. That's correct, sir.
And so exactly on that point, if the bulk of local revenue is paid for through property taxes, more and more of that burden is placed on average, everyday working class people, right?
Correct.
And then the wealthy who have all the stuff and should be paying taxes, they get to walk away scot-free.
They get all the stuff and more stuff while we're left with debt.
And all your amendment does is keep the door open just a little bit longer so not as much stuff is forced through property taxes, correct?
Correct.
Thank you very much. This is a good amendment.
Thank you, sir. I move adoption.
Mr. Meyer, in opposition to the amendment.
Thank you. I respectfully oppose Representative Rodriguez Ramos's amendment. It will decrease efficiency and, quite frankly, just create a tax loophole within this bill. And for those reasons, I'm opposed.
Ms. Rodriguez Ramos to close.
I close.
Ms. Rodriguez Ramos sends up an amendment. The amendment is not acceptable to the author. A record vote has been requested. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Meyer voting no. Show Mr. King voting no. There being 57 ayes and 89 nays and one present not voting, the amendment is not adopted. The amendment fails. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Rodriguez Ramos.
The chair recognizes Ms. Rodriguez Ramos to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. Thank you for your support. I believe in a fair economy where wealth is earned through work and real value, not speculative automation and gambling with millions of dollars. Members, my amendment to HJR4 carves out a simple and much-needed exemption: high-frequency trading practices, speculative automated stock trading that happens at microsecond speed, often thousands of times per second. This isn't about your retirement account or your family's college savings plan. This is about Wall Street algorithms, computers that exploit data speed advantages to skim profits off the top of our financial markets, contributing nothing to real investment or the Texas economy. High-frequency trading isn't job-creating, and it's not wealth-building for working families. It's a casino game played by massive firms, and it drives market and economic volatility. This amendment says if the people of Texas ever decide that these automated trades should pay their fair share, we don't block that possibility with the constitutional ban. HJR, as it stands, would enshrine a permanent tax exemption for the most speculative, least productive sector of our economy. My amendment corrects that. It says, if you're making billions from skimming stock trades that happen in microseconds, you shouldn't be constitutionally immune from public responsibility. Let's not give Wall Street's gamblers a free ride in our Constitution. I urge you to support this amendment to create a tax system that stands for fairness, accountability, and the public good. Thank you. I move adoption.
Meyer to speak against the amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I respectfully oppose Representative Rodriguez Ramos's amendment. Quite frankly, this is not germane to the HJR, and for that reason, I am opposed.
Rodriguez Ramos to close.
I close.
The question occurs on the adoption of the amendment. A record vote has been requested. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Representative Meyer voting no. Show Representative King voting no. Have all members voted? There being 58 ayes and 88 nays, the amendment fails. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Rodriguez Ramos.
The chair recognizes Representative Rodriguez Ramos to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, we can't predict the future. Who are we to deny the voices of future generations of Texans facing who knows what sort of economic conditions we'll be in after 4 years of Trump tariffs? My amendment is simple. Let's revisit this in 2034 and give future Texans a voice. This amendment would sunset the ban on occupation and transaction taxes related to securities markets as we approach the next decade, unless reauthorized by the legislature and the voters. This is a guardrail so that the decisions affecting billions of dollars in financial activity aren't set in stone forever. Our future lawmakers deserve the tools to govern, and that includes the ability to respond to crisis, close budget gaps, and ask the wealthiest individuals in our economy to contribute their fair share, like hedge funds and investment firms. While this legislature is obsessed with protecting Governor Abbott's Texas Stock Exchange, working Texans are worried about Main Street, not Wall Street. Schools are closing across Texas, and our first priority is seriously to give tax carve-outs to the ultra-wealthy. That's a raw deal. Permanent giveaways don't belong in our Constitution, and Texas can tell when they're being sold out. If voters still support this policy in 2034, they can reaffirm it, but no one can tell you what our economic conditions will look like by then. I urge you to support this amendment. Let's create a future where we preserve flexibility and fairness in our tax code. These are values that all Texans should hold dear.
Mr. Wu, for what purpose?
Would the lady yield for questions?
Will the gentlelady yield for questions?
Yes, I will.
Thank you, Rodriguez Ramos. Again, the point of this bill is to close a door on a potential source of revenue for the state, right?
Correct.
And we've made decisions like this in the past where we close the door for future generations, and it's come back to haunt us to this day. You know about that?
Yes, and I fear that we're going to create the same history.
And in the future, this state may be in desperate need of more revenue. If the economy tanks, we get into a massive trade war, everything. Texas would be hit by the NAFTA issues before anybody else.
That's
and we
correct.
may very much need to have an additional source of revenue just to keep the lights on, right?
That's highly probable.
And what your amendment would do is say, look, you guys want to test this out, you want to try this out, let's try it out for a little bit, but let's not tie the hands of legislators far, far into the future.
That's correct, sir.
This is a good amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. I move adoption.
Chair recognizes Mr. Meyer in opposition to the amendment.
I respectfully oppose Representative Rodriguez Ramos' amendment. Obviously, the purpose of this HJR is to ban this tax, this transaction tax, to encourage businesses to come to Texas, and for that reason, I am opposed to this amendment.
The chair recognizes Ms. Rodriguez Ramos to close.
I close.
The question occurs with the adoption of the amendment. A record vote has been requested. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Representative Meyer voting no. There being 57 ayes and 87 nays, the amendment fails to adopt. Does any member wish to speak for or against the resolution? Representative Rodriguez Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members, and thank you all for your support. As we debate on this bill, Texans across the state are at work, whether that's driving a truck, caring for a patient, preparing food, teaching a classroom, or raising a child. Texans are doing their part, and they expect us in this chamber to do ours. But instead of taking up bills that will lower property taxes for renters, increase access to health care, or make life just a little easier for Texas families, our priority today is HJR4, a constitutional amendment to prohibit taxes on securities transactions and the financial institutions that facilitate them. Let's be clear about what this bill does. It bans the legislature permanently from ever asking the wealthiest actors on Wall Street to contribute a single cent through occupation taxes or transaction taxes. Not today, not in a recession, not in a budget shortfall, not even when schools are closing, hospitals are shuttering, and working families are drowning in the cost of living. It doesn't matter how large the trade, it doesn't matter how speculative the transaction. It doesn't matter if the trade was executed by a robot making thousands of deals per second, not a human being. While working Texans pay sales tax on essential items like diapers and school supplies, HJR4 says they will never pay these billionaires will never pay their fair share. Let that sink in. We're constitutionally locking in tax breaks for billionaires, making $10 million trades through high-frequency algorithms, while our constituents are paying more at the gas pump, more at the grocery store, more in property taxes, and getting less in return. So I have to ask, who are we really fighting for? The people on Main Street or the investors on Wall Street? Because this bill doesn't make Texans more free, it makes the ultra-wealthy more untouchable. We know that Texas already has the 7th most regressive tax system in the country. The bottom 20% of earners pay a greater share of their income in taxes than the top 1%. HJR makes that even worse. It tells the oligarchs, the billionaires, and hedge funds, you're safe, we'll never touch your wealth, not even in an emergency, while the working poor continue to be poor. And it tells working Texans, you are not our priority, and sorry, we just have to raise your property taxes again. I urge you to oppose this constitutional tax shelter for the ultra-wealthy and instead stand up for a fair tax system, one that gives future lawmakers the tools to govern, not just protect the privileged. Let's build a Texas where everyone contributes and everyone thrives, not just people who make money off of their money. Thank you.
Mr. Wu, for what purpose?
Would the lady yield for questions?
Will the gentlelady yield for questions?
Yes, sir.
Rep. Rodriguez-Ramos, every session that you've been here, you've watched us give away more of the state to those who already have so much and have so much power to influence. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And this is the very first bill of this session is another giveaway.
Absolutely, an absolute giveaway as to our priorities.
And instead of protecting the middle class that's suffering right now, that's working so hard to just survive, when prices at the grocery store are through the roof and continuing to go up, car prices are going up, we're going to give a giveaway. Right?
That's right. We're telling Texans, we don't care how much your eggs cost, your milk costs, or if you can take your kid to the school that just closed down the street, now you have to drive further. None of that is our priority. Our priority is making the rich richer.
Right. And instead of protecting our schools, we're protecting billionaires.
That is a priority of this GOP-dominated legislature. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Mr. Meyer to close on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is banning a tax that does not currently exist, so there is no giveaway involved in this at all. And the purpose of this House Joint Resolution is obviously to keep Texas as the most business-friendly state in the United States. And for us to continue down that path and to continue to encourage businesses to come to Texas, these are the necessary steps that we have to take to make sure Texas remains as business-friendly as we are. And with that, Mr. Speaker, members, I move passage.
The question occurs in the adoption of HJR4. This is a record vote required by the Constitution. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Representative Meyer voting aye. Show Representative Queenie voting aye. There being 111 ayes and 31 nays, the HJR is adopted.